So most of you know already that what we're doing is we're going to do sharings about what God has done in our community in terms of healthy churches and healthy community. And we have quite a few stories. Those who didn't have stories didn't come today. But we're going to be able to celebrate, give thanks to God for all that He's doing and has done. So one of the things that I want to start with is Christopher Barnes is kind of the new kid in town in a lot of ways. And he has a great story on some of the struggles that Veritas came through. He's the headmaster, is that the title? Christian? Say it again? Head of school. That means you're a head of the school or what? So he's got some great stories on that. And before I start, I'm invested in Veritas, which is a Christian school, but it's also homeschooling. And my oldest granddaughter, who is 17, you're supposed to say something about that, just got the national, thank you. Just got the National Merit Scholarship Award. She's in the top 1.5% of students in America and came through Veritas. So we are proud of the grandkids and especially seeing what Veritas is doing with them. So Christopher, would you come up, share your story? What I want you to do is think about what God's done in your life that relates to your church, your community, your family, those types of things. A lot of the issues are issues of common good and how God is bringing that about in our community. So this is a great story in terms of that. Try and keep yours to 2 minutes. I've got people that are already going to share, but let's keep them down. Not you, you can do 5. Cat. No, well, Cat's got it.
Okay. I'm gonna use one that's already working. All right. As Randy said, I'm the new guy. Moved into Tucson in June 2016 for 4 grandbabies and a new job as head of school at Veritas Academy of Tucson. I'm not sure in which order that goes, but the first piece of mail I opened up on Monday morning, June, I think it was 18th or something, right after Father's Day, that terrible hot Father's Day we had. I opened up my first official piece of mail. Somebody had come from the church office. We share space with Congregation Beth Sar Shalom and Book of Life Community Church. And they brought it over and they said, you know, this looks kind of important. I think it says certified on it. It's from the city. So I opened it up and it was a notice of violation. And we were to cease and desist and vacate the premises. And if we started our school on the day we were 7 weeks later, when we're scheduled to, there'd be severe consequences. It was my first official piece of mail. Yeah. Welcome to Tucson. So I had to leave the next day. A group of a school board member, a couple of the pastors, Ethan Orr, they went downtown to meet with the planning and development. The long and the short was that we sent you a note back in April, the end of April, and we have heard nothing since. You know, there's nothing the city hates worse than being ignored, right? We didn't even know, you know, we tried to play ignorant, but they were not very happy. And they said, you need to apply for a special exception because you're not 5 acres. You have to understand our property was 5 acres, but the church gave a half an acre to the city so they could put a well on it in the 60s because the neighborhood was growing. So we weren't 5 acres. We had playground equipment too close to the neighbors, whatever it was. Doug can tell you, I'll introduce Doug in a moment. But they said you'll have to apply for a special exception. That takes 4 to 6 months. So unfortunately, you just can't open when you're scheduled to open. We had 94 students enrolled, 48 families, 20 teachers that were going to be out of work. And so when I came back from my trip, they all sat down and they told me how bad it was. And they had already looked for alternative campuses. There were none. So we should try to figure out how to communicate to the families we're closing the school. I'm like, what are you talking about? And they said, well, they told us there's no way. And I said, well, God didn't tell us there's no way. God didn't bring us all the way here, bring me all the way here so that we could close the school. I said, surely there's a way. So we just started shooting out emails to everybody, contacting Alliance for Defending Freedom, different people, just anybody. I know Dave Drum, there you are. I sent something to you, and then you sent something to Paul Parisi, who is a great champion for us. And finally, God raised up Doug Newborn, and Doug is a lawyer, private practice, but he also works with the Alliance Defending Freedom to help different clients who are in jams like ours. So we got together and we thought, well, we could use our LUPA, which is Religion, Land Use, Incarcerated Persons Act. Very interesting act. And I'd never heard of it, but Doug had. So we thought we would try to hit the city and say, you're discriminating based on religion. I think that city attorney had that letter in her desk, don't you think? Because within 24 hours, she had this 3-page letter that shot down why it was not religious discrimination. She was just waiting for the chance to use that someday. And so then we thought, we're going to have to go for an injunction. So we did all this stuff. Well, luckily, Doug is well connected. And people he knows said, it's a non-starter. You've got to go through the special exception. That was long and short of a month of nonstop emails. I had him on speed dial. Lena, I'm so sorry. I just found out you guys were on vacation half the time, that I was bugging him night and day. He bought a little hotspot thing so he could keep answering my emails. We were pretty desperate, and you were very supportive, and I appreciate that. And so I went downtown, and I said, I went hand in hand, and I had a meeting scheduled for 1 and 3 people showed up. That's never good. And they all had stern faces. And I said, I'm the new guy. I just got here to Tucson. This is the first thing that I have to tackle. And I was a pastor for 35 years, and I know nothing about planning and zoning. Can you help me? And everything changed, and they became our partners as we went through. And the Lord gave us favor. We were praying, Proverbs. I'm trying to remember the verse, I think. It's in 16 where it says, if the Lord delights in you, he'll make your enemies be at peace with you. That's what we were praying, all the time. And so many different people helped. There's so many different stories. Steve Kay, who I'm sure is not a friend of everybody here, but he really helped us meet with the neighbors, find out what the complaints were, figure out how to get some of those complaints fixed. He helped us in a neighborhood meeting that went off the rails. And by the way, I'm so thankful for everybody who prayed. I know I sent out hundreds of emails asking for prayer. If it wasn't for the Lord, I would have lost it in that neighborhood meeting. This guy was standing up calling me a liar and a crook and all kinds of things. But God just gave me peace. And then Steve Kate jumped up and said, these people are dealing with good faith. They're not liars. They're not criminals. Okay, so you're getting the hook. Okay, long story short, got through the special exception, won the special exception with the zoning examiner. Then the neighborhood association appealed, tried to mediate, because the Bible says, go to your friend before you go to court. Got worse, so we had to go before the mayor and the city council. Everybody had told me from the outset, the last thing you want is to go before the mayor and the city council. They have never decided anything in a Christian school forever. And God just worked through different people. Cam Anderson is here, he's one of our dads. But he raised up 3 men who all knew 2 people on the council. So we kind of knew that God was going to rule in our favor. But people who were not even ever in favor of school choice, Christian values, or anything else, we got a 5-1 vote out of the mayor and the city council. So we praise the Lord for it.
So we often talk about the difference between God's power and God's favor. And in this one, we saw God's favor. Some just amazing things in terms of it got more than they asked for. And we saw people that are in city government do just amazing turnarounds. So Zach Yenser has been one of the people that we know God has an anointing on. And so we love it that Zach is willing to come and share. And he has some great blessings and favor from God. So Zach, you come on up.
Well, thank you, Randy. The praise that I want to share about is a movement of God that is happening in Tucson, but also happening around the world. And over the course of the last year, God is really moving in His church to bring the generations together. We're at this really amazing time in Tucson, I think in a period of time in history and around the world where God is bringing the younger to the older and the older to the younger. And it's been really special.
Quit looking at me like that, Zach.
What was that?
I was teasing.
Over multiple opportunities to get to meet with different church leaders and intergenerational groups, I have yet to find in 2017 any antagonism from older champions of the faith. Any of the stereotypes that you could imagine about an older view of the younger or a younger view of the older, we're not seeing that in Tucson. Yes, it exists, but it's not as dominant as you would think. And I can think of 3 churches who have this year strategically made efforts to become older, which I think is an interesting point, where they've said, we can't be fully effective if we're not intergenerational, right? Multi-generational is a half step. You can have generations in the same space who don't engage together, and you have the same result as if they weren't there at all together. But intergenerationally connected, where churches said, if we're going to execute our full impact as churches, we have to have both younger and older. And I live downtown and get to interact with some of the downtown and midtown churches that tend to be younger demographically, and they are voicing in Tucson what I am seeing across the nation and even globally, where my generation is saying, we desperately want to be with you. We want the older voices to be with us in ministry and in life. And I've also been able to see some really amazing older couples who are in their 70s and 80s who have said, you know what, our season isn't over. That we don't have to come in with an agenda, but we want to be with you. And there is this desire to be together and with each other. And the church is just, the Big C Church is at this amazing time, I believe, where God is calling the generations together for mentorship and for ministry and for life. And it would be painful if the Big C Church missed it. And it's really cool that the church in Tucson looks to be on the right track. The church in Tucson isn't missing that. And so from a younger generation to an older, thank you for the work of ministry that you've done in 2017. Thank you for being a part of this intentional conversation. And thank you for allowing us to come alongside what God is already doing in your life and ministry. And please keep it up. We are desperate to be on this journey with you. We just don't know always how to ask it. But praise God that God is bringing the generations together in Tucson in a wonderful way.
So Zach's being modest because he's kicking off his organization and he's doing some amazing things. Plus, he just published his book, and was a pastor from Dubai, right, that got a hold of him. He said, I want to know how to mix these generations. So the millennials are much, much more international than us old people. That's what I was referring to when I was teasing you. So a friend of mine, Chris Sheaf, is here today, and he is involved with what's going on with Rio Nuevo right now, and he has a great story. He's one of the business leaders, one of our community leaders in business, and he is a believer. And so I've known Chris for a long time, and he's very nice to me, and that he shows up when I ask him to. And I actually got him and Zach together because of what they're doing. They're both doing. So, Chris, would you come on up and share a little bit of your story?
Thank you, Randy. Let me start off by acknowledging the work that Zach is doing. What I'm doing is reasonably important. What you're doing, Zach, is absolutely vital. And you have my profound thanks for the effort that you put into this. Bringing youth and younger people into the faith to give them an understanding of the possibilities of life for all of us. There is no more important task. In my own personal life, I've dedicated to at least getting all my grandchildren and close family members to get there, because at least I can do that, and then I'm working for that same cause in other fronts. So I guess you'd be interested in the Rio Nuevo story from, I won't say it's a godly perspective, because there isn't a lot of godly perspectives when you get around public processes. However, I believe that there has to be some bigger hand that's moved in what we've been able to accomplish. Trying to give you the briefest description, you all saw the headlines when the state legislature said enough is enough. $232 million disappeared, and not one thing was shown for it. So, and I want to apologize if I seem like I'm dropping a name, because I'm not an important person, but I get a call in the state Senate. The president of the Senate called several of us and said, in effect, we're going to take the TIF away from Tucson. Could I ask for a show of hands? Who knows what a TIF is? Okay, so there's a few of you. It's called a tax increment financing district. In most communities across the country, this is how stadiums are built or major points of public infrastructure. What it is a community commits to a project, and then some of the tax revenue that comes through sales taxes is rebated back to that community specifically to build that project. Tucson was able to get its TIF district passed, which normally would not have happened because Glendale wanted a stadium, and they couldn't figure out how to block Tucson's effort at the same time allow Glendale's effort. So the state legislature allowed the Proposition 400 to go forward, and to everybody's, well, it depends on your perspective, but surprise here and disappointment in Phoenix, Prop 400 passed in Tucson. We got a TIF district. The proposition for the Glendale Stadium failed. It later passed. So Tucson was free to start, and the idea was that we were going to rebuild our convention center. So over the following years, represented almost 10 years, the city very artfully diverted those funds to other uses and went through $232 million. The legislature had had enough. Some of us got a call. And I was asked, will you step in and become part of the board and take this thing over? And I said, absolutely not. Why would I do that? I can't get anything done. Well, we had a little conversation, and I don't mean to get lengthy with this, I'm just going to tell you, because, you know, in Matthew, Jesus is describing the Father and says, if you believe and you pray, it will be given to you. In fact, he goes on in Matthew 21:21 and says, this mountain will be moved into the sea if you believe. To me, the lesson that's the takeaway in here, that the reason that Zach and others need to be successful in bringing young people into the faith is because God has written a manual for us that's really a motivational manual in the form of a Bible. It tells us what the possibilities are, and it tells us that we can do the impossible. And he demonstrates this over and over and over again through commitment to faith, which is really leading to a better life for all of us. So you take an impossible situation, $232 million gone. The city had bonded out all the future income streams. So not only was that money gone, we were broke and we had no way to get more money. And Chris, will you take this over? And I said, I got calls from people that you know. I mean, they are names that are well known. They said, are you crazy? Haven't you had enough of this? And I thought, so my condition was, and Fletcher McCusker and Mark Urban, the three of us, my condition was, I will not touch this unless the checkbook is taken away from the city and we have it. And I will tell you, if there's a cup of coffee bought for Rio Nuevo, I personally sign that check to this day. I'm treasurer. Not a penny goes through there. Then we said, how do we get rid of the distrust? Because the board was fired, we were put in, and the first meetings were pretty, they made a lot of people mad. So we said, you know what? We're going to be absolutely transparent in everything we do. Every check we write is going to go on a website. Every agreement we make is going to go on the website. Every meeting we hold is going to be public, and nobody is going to be held in the dark. And we've maintained that to this day. And I think, I don't know if anybody here works for TUSD, but hint, you might try that. It makes you be honest, but you get tremendous support out of it. So, we have a downtown that is dead dark after 6 o'clock. There are 4 operating restaurants in downtown, numerous empty buildings, and a female trying to walk from a late evening office to her car is seriously threatened just by the environment. How do we turn all that around? Well, we get transparent and we say, what have we got? The first thing that was happening is there were a bunch of lawsuits going on between parties in the city, and everybody in the old board was spending $175,000 a month in legal fees. So we grabbed the parties and put them in a room and said, we're going to settle this. And they said, oh yeah, we'll get right on this. No, we're settling. Well, we're going to get right on. No, I mean right now. And one by one, we took every Apocary's thing and said, this is what's going to take. It's settled. Now, my lawyer friends were very disappointed in this. They had a lot of reasons why we just can't do that. But we did it. And we knocked off, and we took our legal bills from $175 down below $30,000 a month. Overnight. But we got rid of all this controversy. And then we started one by one. So we had, now the first thing you need is some places for people to go. And you may notice, if you go downtown, Zach, you live down there, do you see any chain restaurants down there? I'll ask you, Zach, are there any chains down there other than Brueggel's? Yeah, well, that's by design. We wanted restaurants that created unique experiences. Get this, the mountain can move into the water. There are over 80, from 4 to over 80, and they're all successful. We were able to create, and some of this was not our doing, the trolley helped a lot, but we were able to create over 2,000 residential units, 1,000 dorm units, plus we have another 1,000 on the road. So all of a sudden we have a lot of people there, and they need the restaurants, and they're starting to participate. And downtown is becoming more active, and the buildings are filling. And then you have the hub, and you have all the area that's on the eastern end, and the Rialto Theater, and that whole end. And so we turned our attention more to the west, and we started working on the arena parcel. The whole convention center was rebuilt, and I'll have to say the city was quite helpful. They did their part, and all of a sudden we were able to get bookings. We couldn't get a booking because if you went into the restrooms where the performers had to they, anybody with any particular draw would say, I'm just not coming. Well, we filled up that place with Elton John recently. I mean, to have an Elton John performance come says something about the status of our venue. We now have the convention center, and if you've been there, and the big arena and whatnot, you've noticed that it's all been refurbished. Put $30 million into just touching it up and refurbishing it. Completely changed the restrooms. We brought the Roadrunners hockey team in. We're looking at arena football right now. We have 2 or 3 other things on that. Okay, we'll wrap it up here.
And just close by sharing your help thing, but keep it short.
Oh, well. I had a few setbacks. Yeah. I'm in development. We sold it.
Here, change.
And then everything kind of started falling apart, and I found out I was a cancer patient. Given 3 years to live. That was 8.5 years ago. Yeah. Now, that's where prayer comes in. Let me just tell you. I was asked just last night about that, and I just said, it's all prayer and good fortune, and the prayer is not relieve me of this cancer, because many good people don't. The prayer was give me the acceptance of your plan for my life, and that apparently included a very fortunate road for me. I was treated at Mayo, and just recently, after 8.5 years in a bone marrow transplant, I was taken off chemo. So I'm really in a window here where I still have it, but I have it at a modest level to the point where I'm not taking treatments. And I've got to tell you, this was taking 2 days a week, traveling up there and doing it and trying to run my business and stuff. And I'm sorry if I got emotional, but it is overwhelming to me that I'm standing here in really good shape. I mean, I'm not, So anyway, in spite of that, we were able to bring Rio Nuevo. It is going very well now. As I said, we have all this new stuff. The biggest hit we've had is the Caterpillar headquarters, which is being built. That's the surface mining division, and that has enormous implications. We have hexagon mining also downtown. The City Park project is going up right now. And Tucson now is recognized as one of the most vibrant downtowns in the country. And believe me, that didn't happen because Fletcher and myself and Mark and Edmund Marcus and Janie Cox and Jeff Hill are super intelligent people. It happened because we took the blocks away from the free enterprise marketplace and allowed the creativity of a whole bunch of people to step in and take advantage of an opportunity that was sitting right in front of us.
You guys have to tell them that nobody gets emotional in this group. So, thank you, Chris. So one of the things that I'm always blessed by is seeing God work in our community, and a lot of our heroes are unknown people. So we have so many people that God uses that we don't know about. In the business community, how many of you knew Chris? Raise your hands. Just a couple. Amazing guy, amazing hero in our community. Let's give him one more hand. Is it working, Kat? Okay, so I'm going to open it. I have a few more people that I want to speak, but I'm going to bring those towards the end. So anybody else that immediately wants to raise your hand to share something where God is blessed.
I don't know if this is something that's going to be brought up, but I have to share it because when I started with Fort Tucson about 4 years ago, there was a movement among the churches to help with the foster and adoption program. Is that going to be brought up? Okay. So the idea was if every church in the city of Tucson has a family that will go into the foster program, then all the foster kids that are out there, there were like every week there were issues about thousands of kids that were in office buildings and places where they being held because there were not enough foster families. Well, God had a different way. The foster I forgot. Anyway, it didn't quite work that we got foster families, but what happened was God had a different way of doing things, which I just love. And Care Portal, J. Michael and a couple other folks that got involved with Care Portal, we think we had 50 churches involved with that program. In the first year, we helped place over 1,000 kids the first year after it got started, because people in the churches are helping with direct needs of the kids that are otherwise being taken away from their homes. And so rather than them being taken away from their homes for simple things like fire extinguishers or bed bunks or bunk beds or safety equipment and things like that, they get to stay with their aunts or uncles or grandparents or something instead of going into the foster family. So this year, I heard on the television the other day that one of the major organizations that's been around for 100 years, it's called Casa de los Niños. How many of you heard of it? They've had to change their focus on what they do in Tucson, and they're no longer housing kids. They're actually helping families to be preventative so they don't lose their kids. And I think that is a testament to the city of, the church community in Tucson. So I just had to share that. Oh.
So there's 3 refugee resettlement agencies in Tucson, and then there's like probably 15 to 20 refugee ministries now in Tucson. And we've been doing this for almost 12 years now. This is the first year that we've actually been able to come together on our trainings, our information nights for volunteers. Some of those agencies and organizations had their own, everyone had their own training, or they didn't have a training at all. And so I feel like it was God that brought this whole thing together, and now all of us are having one training, and it happens every month. And it's actually the most amazing cooperation and collaboration that we've seen in the refugee realm. So it's been exciting for us.
Somebody else. Okay, Roy, come on up while we're waiting for somebody else to think. One of the issues I shared a little bit last time is we in the faith community believe that God oftentimes works through suffering and something going wrong, and it gives us more faith. I don't do that every day for sure, but I know that a lot of people, as they grow in faith, they see in the midst of downturns, we see God step in. So Roy has one of those.
And like preachers do, we're going to expand a little bit on that and back the train up slightly from where you want to start. And what I want to implore you to remember when you leave is, as God guides, He provides. And if it's His will, it's His bill. You've heard that? And the mission truly operates that way. Our job is to be obedient to what God's calling. Your job is to be obedient to what God's calling, not take your plans, develop it in your 5-year strategy and give it to God and say, bless our plans, right? If it's His plans and you're seeking Him and walking the steps He puts you on, guess what? His plan will come and it'll be pre-blessed. You don't even ask for the blessing. You don't need to thank Him for the blessing because it's His plan. And the mission's operated like that since our founder, Ray Chastain, who is Lisa Chastain's grandfather, opened the mission in 1953. Trusting God, walking in faith. We do our part, God does His part. We all say that, right? God's on the throne, not me. God does it. But yet we like to take hold of things and put things together and make it happen and coordinate, and have our meetings and ask God to bless our decisions. And the mission doesn't operate that way, thank God. we just are, they got me as the director, so right away you got to say, geez, what's God thinking? And because Roy can't do it, really, but I know how to walk in faith and take those steps and trust God. So back up the train just a little bit, and in 2008, we felt God telling us it was time to open a new women's center. We're turning down $5 to $25 a year. Wonderful stories with that, how God provided $4 million, and we have a new transitional house and a new women's center, absolutely gorgeous. Story after story, how that money came in, the volunteers came in. But all we had to do was walk in faith. We did not have a board meeting, an extra board meeting, a committee, a fundraising committee, a fundraising drive. We just told the community, here's what God's doing. If you want to be on board, join us. And during the worst economy, the economy crashes right after we take our first step of faith. Boom! It's like, oh, okay. But we kept walking. And look what God did. Now we're in the same journey for a new men's center. And what had happened is like the women's center, we prayed for several years that our men were in a very tight building built in 1956. It's old. It's being held together by duct tape. It's safe and clean, but it's just old and too small. We're sleeping 20 to 40 men in floor beds at night, 110 in bunk beds, and we're jam-packed in a small building. And we thought, Lord, this is not excellence like we brought for our women. A beautiful center. The men deserve the same excellence. And so we are feeling that something needs to be done. We don't know when. And when we opened the Women's Center, Mayor Walkup says, what's your next vision? I said, a men's center, but probably not for a while. He said, well, you got to have that vision and move. I said, well, in God's timing. And that was in 2011 when I told him that. So we've been praying for new men's center. It would be nice. It's needed. It would be a better way to treat men with more dignity and respect. But God, you need to show us when it's time to walk. See, we could have made plans and had board meetings and committees and pushed it to happen and then say, God, why isn't it happening? And you're not blessing us. But we didn't. We just waited. And so guess what happens in February this year, the end of February, we find out that our men's center does not meet the new, somewhat new, National Fire Code safety of 1 person per 50 square feet. We had 2 people in bunk beds per 50 square feet. So the city of South Tucson inspected the building and said, wait a minute, we know we approved you for this in 2006, but in 2012 the law changed and now we're 2017. And since you had a fire last year, which got us into the radar, God even used that, they were keeping a close eye on us. They said, we need to cut your beds down. They gave us 3 weeks to place 100 men in other places in town, which there weren't very many, but we were able to do that. So, okay, terrible news. And we said, no, it's not terrible news. God has something good for us. And we felt that was God kicking us, going, now's the time to start walking. Trust me. Trust me. Start that journey again. What does that look like? We didn't know. We started looking at some properties. I then attend a meeting in, I don't know what it was, March the 1st, SASA, or whatever it's called, the social service meeting. Lisa Chastain is the speaker at that meeting. I just said, I want to go to that. Or what's the first meeting? I ought to be there. It's 7 in the morning across town. I don't want to go. Oh, I'll let J. Michael down and he'll be mad at me. And so I'm just like, do I go? So I went. I went because, the Holy Spirit says, get up and get out of bed and go across town. And that meeting, Lisa Chastain is speaking, the granddaughter of our founder. So I thought, I'll go support Lisa. I'll be a good guy. I get to the meeting, Lisa pulls me aside and says, hey, Roy, I can't get the mission off my mind. I don't know what it is. Do you ever need board members? Because I feel God calling me to Gospel Rescue Mission. I said, well, I'll let you know. We have a board. And I didn't do backflips over it. She's wondering, when? What am I, chopped liver? So I'm leaving in the car going back to the office, and God says, hello, Roy. New men's shelter. You're going to need somebody to help direct that like we had the last time. So I get with Lisa, call her, say, Lisa, I don't think it's the board you're supposed to be involved in. It's supposed to be on staff at the mission. And so she prayed about it, felt called to be the person that would come on board once we found a building and started that process. Could be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, but down the road. Well, the next month we identify a couple of buildings and they're looking good, and Lisa's going to be coming in at some point, and our finance, the head of the finance and the operations person, our associate director, Danny Hansen, retired. And now we have an immediate opening for somebody to come in on an executive level staff and get to know our business in that way. So I called Lisa, guess what? We have a board meeting Sunday, and the playing field just changed a little bit here, and how would you like to start like right away as our operations director? And she prayed about it, agreed to that, and now we have Lisa. So we got our building cut, we got Lisa, we got some buildings we're looking at, we just keep walking, no money, $20,000 in the bank for a multi-million-dollar project. We're walking. I get a call from a donor, talks to Lisa. I wasn't there, and says, Lisa, we want to bring a bequest to Roy. And Lisa talks to him and says, can I ask how much? And they said, well, it's significant. Well, significant to one person's $1,000, to somebody's 10 or 100. So she said, I don't want to tell you what it is because I want to see the look on Roy's face. So, okay. So I meet with her, take her on a tour, loves the place, sits down and hands me the check, and it's $1 million. And she said, this is the first of other disbursements, and the others will be pretty significant too. What that means, I don't know, but there's more to come. So then we developed this movie premiere for our donors, October 18th, the Same Kind of Different as Me movie. We invite them. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a matching grant to announce at this movie that we've got some money set aside? So I ended up meeting with the donor who gave us $1 million for our Women's Center and $250,000. So when we opened a mission in Prescott 4 years ago, he paid for that building. So I just wanted to bring up to date, let him meet Lisa and what our future looks like, and that we're going to start moving on this new men's center that he was concerned about. And so by the time we finished meeting, he says, I knew you were probably headed toward a new men's center. I brought my checkbook, and he said, well, for this year, I'd like to start it off for this year's gift, $250,000. So now I have a $250,000 gift for matching fund. And I thought, Lord, can't you add to that a little bit more? Yeah, I'm a little greedy on you, Lord. It'd be nice to go to the movie and say we have $500,000 or $1 million or whatever. And I get a call a couple of weeks after that. We're talking just the beginning of October now. I get a call, and it's a gentleman who represents a guy, or not represents a guy. He's a investment broker. And one of his clients wants to give us an anonymous gift toward the men's center. He heard about it. We haven't even advertised it. We don't know what building for sure yet, and people are sending money. And I said, can I ask how much? Because I got this matching fund thing I'm looking at. And he said, let me look. And he picks it up. He goes, $150,000. So now we have $400,000 set aside, plus the $1 million with more to come. And we haven't even figured out the building and announced it to the donors yet that this is the building, this is the cost, please help us. And God's already putting these things into motion and taking something that you would have thought would have been bad, but he used it to his good to say, start walking, and then orchestrated all these things in order. And those two buildings may not be the buildings we're getting, because now we're involved with a third option. That's a wonderful option. I can't say what it is yet. It's not in the deal. You can probably figure it out. It's going to be huge. It's a collaboration, and we were invited into this collaboration by a secular behavioral health organization and also by a foundation. They said, we want your shelter to be the shelter in this project. And it's going to be millions less than us building our own place. So God does it all. We just keep going, okay, I'm blind. I'm Roy the director. Remember me? I don't know where I'm going. Just help me out. And he does.
Thanks, Roy. So we've been telling Roy he's too melancholy, he needs to be a little more enthusiastic. Glenn, would you share with us? Come on up. No, I'm going to pray at the end because we're running late.
It's been in 2011, for those of you who are pastors and those of you who serve in your churches, it was a really difficult time. Opposition. It was a season of flatness. There was no growth in our church, and I was discouraged. And to the point that some of you who've been in ministry know these seasons come where the evil one just puts these doubts. You're not the one. You don't have what it takes. You're not good enough, I see some head shaking. Some of you have experienced that. The evil one's really gifted at that. It's very skilled. And to be honest, I after admitting it to my staff who had seen it, And I actually had to go for extended counseling. I spent a week at a place called Blessing Ranch. Some of you know about that. It's a great place. And then it was the next summer after that I took a summer break for about 3-4 weeks, and God made it really clear. He said, the thing that you need to focus on. By the way, coming out of that season was I developed my life motto, and my life motto, you've actually already heard it spoken, faithfulness, not success. I just have to be faithful. The success is ultimately up to God, and that's not an excuse for not being responsible, but just be faithful. And so then the next summer, God really spoke to me clearly. He said, you need to focus on your staff health. And honestly, it was as clear as could be. And it wasn't an audible voice of God, but it was as clear as could be. It's all about your staff's health. And I literally said, and what does that mean? I had no clue. I honestly had no clue. But God, as we've already talked about, God knows. And it was that summer that this book came out, Patrick Lencioni, The Advantage, subtitle, Why Organizational Health Trumps Everything in Business. I went, probably should read that. And then through some other meetings, and it just began to be really clear. So I discovered a tool that summer called Best Christian Workplace Institute. I needed a tool because I didn't even know where to begin. And so I had our staff, and as I'm talking about this, I realize that we're a larger church, we have a larger staff, but everything I'm saying can scale to no matter what size church or organization you're leading. This is universal. We just had a large enough staff that I needed a tool to get some data. We took the Best Christian Workplace, and I knew when we took it that we were going to fail, and we did. We failed miserably. The first results were terrible. And so we just began to work. We've taken it now 5 or 6 years, I forget, 5 or 6, but every year we would just work on 1, 2, or 3 key things, because you can't fix it all at once. And so from the first year to the second year, we moved from not doing well to becoming a Best Christian Workplace in 1 year. They'd never seen a change happen so quickly. And I only mention that to say there's an incredible power of being intentional. Taking serious that there's a problem, beginning to do something to address it. You don't have to fix it all. And then every year we just keep working on a few more things that we learn to discover. So I was sharing with Randy how the reason why he asked me to share was that we're in a very different season now than I was back in 2011. We had 21% growth last year, 310 baptisms. We're already 50% higher than we were last year in baptisms. And Randy said, what do you account for that? And my first thought was we've been focused on the mission, not members. Jesus said there was a shepherd who had 99 members, and they wanted all the attention on them, but he left the 99 to go look for the lost one. We've been mission focused, not member focused. We've tried really hard to keep that clear and have a very clear mission and vision. But what really has made the difference is we have a really healthy staff. Here's one of the gauges that, as I say this, you'll begin to figure it out. There were certain questions in the Best Christian Workplace that identify whether your staff is engaged or not. Have you ever worked with someone who's not really engaged in their job? They're doing their job, but they're not really engaged in who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. And when we took it the first year, we had 13% of our staff that were totally disengaged. 50% that were neutral. So do the math. That's over. Oh, it's almost 70% that weren't really engaged. Today we're at 90%. Makes the world of difference. And that was some hard choices. One of the areas we discovered that were the least engaged in our church was the maintenance and facility staff. guess who interacts with the congregation as much as the pastors? Maintenance and facility staff. And so that was a huge turnaround. And yeah, it's just absolutely critical that we have really healthy staff. And so that's why Dave and I, with For Tucson, decided that we would launch something new this year, because we want to see Tucson transformed. We want to see God's influence truly make a difference. And so Dave and I started what we call Pastor's Edge. In fact, there's some flyers somewhere here. There we go. There's some flyers over there on the table that look like this. Pastor's Edge began last January. And here's the whole purpose of Pastor's Edge. We want to help pastors be healthy, because healthy pastors lead healthy churches, and healthy churches are essential to a healthy community. And so we have about 25 pastors, senior pastors, lead pastors that have been meeting monthly for some practical help in how to be healthy themselves, how to lead healthy churches, and it's been a phenomenal experience in that. And so we're going to continue it next year, and so that's why the flyers are there. If you know some people, some pastors that they have to be a lead pastor or a solo pastor or church planter. If you know some of those people, we encourage you to be a part of it, because it's a time where we get to rub shoulders together, learn from each other, encourage each other, and get some practical things that will help us be healthy and lead healthy churches. And so God has been just doing some amazing things, and we're seeing that happening more and more. And I'm grateful for that opportunity, and I'm grateful for Pastor's Edge, because there's a whole crew of folks in our city that want to be healthy, leading healthy churches. It's going to make a huge difference.
So we wanted to honor some people. Jerry, I'm going to have you close with, Jerry has a story in terms of provision too, but I think I'll have you close, maybe close in prayer after we do this. So Dave, come on up. And why don't you start with Dana?
So this has been a year of transition for lots of folks in lots of different arenas. I'm in the middle of one. That was our theme for our Pastor Prayer Summit. TMA has experienced a lot of transition this last year too. Steve Wright was part of our leadership team for years and years and years, and God has transitioned him into some new things. Dustin Trammell was part of that team. And then we've had two additional people who were a part of our team, and in many cases for many, many years at the start of the year, and then that transition has been in place there too. So Dana, where are you? Dana Yenser, come on up. So Dana is one of those. Many of you know Dana is I don't even know what your title is, but founder, developer, chief guru of Ministry Resources Institute, and doing wonderful, wonderful ministry. And so Dana was a part of our team for 2 years, I believe. And one of the great ways that played out was just Dana and his team would always be the folks over there at the table greeting everybody and just own that. And so we want to thank you for your time of service in TMA, and we have a couple things to honor you with as well.
So Dana, I'm going to read this. This is the Salt and Light Award. It says, "You are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven." To Dana Yenser. We have the little coin there, and there's one in the back as well. And it says, "In appreciation for your efforts in community renewal," not my organization, the community as a whole renewal, November 2017. And then we have a little gift certificate and a coin. So we do thank him. There's so many people making huge sacrifices in our community, and we're so thankful. And especially Dana's one of the behind-the-scenes heroes too with TMA and all your leadership. So thank you so much. So Lisa Chastain has been talked about already, but we'll talk about her some more. So Lisa, come on up here. So Lisa's been on the leadership team since the beginning, and actually in the leadership for many, many, many years. So I usually say she's one of my alpha females, keeps us in line. And one of the things that I've seen with Lisa, and one of the reasons we wanted her in leadership, is she's one of those leaders that empowers everybody else. She's one of the best collaborators. Dave probably should have had her picture on the front of his book, John 17 book. But so most of you know her because of Hope Fest and Hope Network, but she's also been in leadership behind the scenes. But she's one of those that I'd say, Lisa, you need to get up there. And she'd say, no, you guys get up there. But if she hadn't been doing what she was doing, we wouldn't have been able to do what we do. So we just thank you. And there's a Tavolino's gift certificate.
So just a couple other quick notes, and then we do have one more testimony that Randy has lined up. So this is we're finishing up the 6th year of Tucson Ministry Alliance, and it was built on a number of other things as well. And so just incredibly thankful for the kind of stories that we've already heard. There's so much more that can happen when everybody is playing their part on the same team than when everybody's just off doing their own thing. And so that was the genesis of TMA, and so really, really thankful for that. 2 of the other people who have been a part of our leadership team for a year or 2 are Suzette Howe and Elaine House. They will be continuing. We have asked Elaine to step into a point person role with TMA, and so you'll be seeing more and more of her. She so wanted to be here today, but is out of town. So we'll more formally introduce that in January, but I wanted to mention it now. And then the other thing as we prepare for 2018, typically we would have given you the schedule today of all the topics for 2018. The reason that we did not is because of all of this transition. We are hoping to be able to invite a couple other people to the leadership team, and we want them to have a voice in the selection of the topics. Advisory team has already met. We already have tons of ideas and a sense, but when it gets down to what specifically are we going to talk about, we want a couple more voices at the table. So be watching for that. That will be coming very soon, and well in advance of the January meeting, but TMA will continue as it has been, with some additional people investing in it as well. So thank you so much for all that you've been doing, and can't wait to see what all else gets to happen in this coming year as well.
So let's have a hand for Dave. He's really been he's the one that has carried the heavy end of the log in TMA, so he really should get the admiration. He says no. But he's done so much, so we just appreciate him. I was talking to Jerry on Sold No More, and tomorrow I'm doing a training for our group and thinking about if we don't get in the fight, evil wins. We have to enter into the fight, and that's probably Glenn's thing on who's engaged. But people don't even believe in our community that there's evil going on. So most of you know Jerry Payton, that he does Sold No More, which has to do with sex trafficking. And so it's one of the ministries that is fighting some of the evils in our community. We have lots of them. So Jerry had a story in terms of resources, so I want him to share that. And then would you just share or just pray for all the ministries here and God's favor on our community as well as the ministries?
Randy's not as old as you think, because I'm older than he is by 2 weeks. Many men I know, we pastored together for 15 years, so we go way back. Yeah, Sold No More, 2 years ago, shut down for 3 months because we had no money, couldn't pay rent or salaries. That happens. And this year, we created our own curriculum that we released in July, and all of a sudden, we've now spoken to about 35,000 students here in Tucson. helping prevent them from becoming abused. And the curriculum we developed, we discovered the national movement realizes they're not doing prevention education. We need to do it. So we have people from out of state wanting it, and we just trained 120 USD teachers in using it, and they bought 40 copies of it. And I'm the only full-time employee until 4 months ago. So I'm out praying, what was it, a month ago? I'm just like, 2 months ago, I said, God, this is great, but we don't have the resources, not the money. But God opens the doors, right, Roy? I said, I don't think I've ever prayed this prayer before. I said, God, could you open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing until there is no more need? That's what I prayed. I went to the office, I picked up the mail, got there, and my bookkeeper comes in. She opens the mail, and she said, hey, did you see that check for $50,000? No, I hadn't. And obviously that person wrote the check before I prayed, right? But that's how God works things out. He wants me to enter into his process simply by stepping out in faith. So we're at the point where God wants to take what we're doing and expand it nationally. And that's just what he wants to do with it. So pray with us about that. Oh, we're using the money with Harvest Media. We're developing online training because my daughter started traveling to other states to train. She did 72 presentations last month in Tucson. And I said, you can't do that. So we're Harvest Media, we're working with them to develop online training. So it's true, you just do what God calls you to do, and he'll do whatever he wants to with it. So it's been a great year. In the midst of the most ugly stuff I've ever dealt with in my life. God is light in the darkness, so it doesn't matter how dark it is. It only matters if the light is shining. You notice that? Let's pray. Father, you are at work. In fact, Jesus said, my Father is always at work. There's never a time in Tucson you haven't been at work, or even in each of our lives, our families, our churches. Sometimes we can see it more, and sometimes we don't. But Lord, by faith, we believe you're always at work in my life, and ours, and our community. But Lord, you know we need to see glimpses of what you're doing. We need that kind of hope. So I thank you for each of the stories that are in this room where we can see hope. We can see light in the darkness. And people are drawn to that light. And darkness is dispelled by it. So I thank you for the ones that were shared today. Boy, this is encouraging. And most of us don't get $1 million checks written. But Lord, we need to see you do that with others, because that encourages us. We're not jealous, we're rejoicing with them for that. And Father, for those here who this has been a bad year for them. Things have gone south. We've seen that. They had to lay off people. No money, sickness, cancer. Father, when one part of the body suffers, we all suffer. When one part rejoices, we all rejoice. So Father, let them know that they're a part of this body and they're a part of every victory that was shared here. That's their victory. And those of us who are in a time of blessing, like Pantano Church, Father, we are a part of everyone who is suffering lack, or suffering sliding downward physically. We are all part of your body. Thank you for that. And thank you that you're the one that's going to bring the results. We just have to be faithful. We cast all this to you in Jesus' name. Amen.
So I hope that's encouraging to you. If you didn't share and you wanted to, grab somebody before you get out of here and share it with them. And we know that God's doing great things in our community, and a lot of times it's invisible. It's supposed to be. It's spiritual, right? Go ahead. Okay, Dave's got something.
We had our 14th Pastor Prayer Summit last week. So if you count the 3-day ones and the 1-day ones, it was our 14th. And one of the observations that we made is that God has been moving the body from isolation to connection, and from connection to trust. And one of the indications of that is that you can actually, when there's trust, you can actually honor somebody without worrying that everybody else is going to say, well, why aren't you honoring me? That takes trust to be able to get there. Pastor Tirso Rubin and the Hispanic Pastors Association for many years have been having a Christmas party within the Hispanic pastors community where they honor one of the Latino pastors and everybody just rejoices together. In recent years, that has extended to where now it's the body of Christ in our city. And so if you are a pastor or pastor spouse, you are invited to join that celebration the first Monday night of December. I have some tickets, and Dan Johnson, who is wearing the orangish shirt, I only know 8 colors, so that's orange. Dan will grab the tickets and can help give the information. If you'd like to be a part of that, isn't it awesome that in the body of Christ, as Latino, African American, and Anglo pastors, we can honor each other because we've grown a little bit further in terms of trust. So praise the Lord. And have a wonderful Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we'll see you in January.